Good morning, everyone. My name is Adam Livingston, and I am the Bitcoin Wizard. Strategy had their Q3 2025 financial results yesterday during that earnings call. It was incredible. Super happy with the results from the team. We're going to be blazing through the financial results, and then I'll be giving my opinion on what the biggest news was out of the earnings call. Just a quick reminder, today at 2 p.m. Central Time, I will be talking with Adrian Morris from True North on MSTR's ATM and MNAV. We're going to be talking about these things in more detail than probably anybody has. There's been a lot of complaints over and over again about the ATM driving the price action of MSTR, and Adrian has put together some incredible research going back quite a long time, and we're going to be talking about what is actually driving the price. If you like mathematical reality and true data, check it out. It'll be a great conversation, so let's get into Strategy's Q3 earnings call right now. But before we get started, I want to thank Horizon for sponsoring this video. Horizon helps you buy Bitcoin using your trapped home equity in your house, the rotting drywall into Bitcoin. Who doesn't want to do that right now if we're on the precipice of a giga bull run? There's no debt, monthly payments, or term limits. The Bitcoin is fully yours to custody however you want with no risk of forced liquidation. I'll talk more about them at the end of the video. Link is in the description below. So real quick, the headline results here. This is the second consecutive quarter of major profitability, clocking it at $3.9 billion of operating income. Now, that's obviously thanks to the new FASB accounting rules that is allowing us to mark the Bitcoin appreciation as operating income. The net income came in at $2.8 billion with a diluted earnings per share of $8.42. But my biggest takeaway from these results is that we got to think of S&P 500 inclusion potentially in December. There's a few crypto companies that come to mind that got into the S&P 500 recently. We had Coinbase get in, we had Block get in, and as well as Robinhood just getting in. And we also have to remember that not every company gets in their first quarter of eligibility, like Tesla, for example. However, Strategy could now be getting in December. They did not get in their first window of eligibility, but after a second quarter of positive results, I think the odds are now increasing. And we got to remember also the credit rating of a B- is also going to be helping them to get in, but we'll be talking more about that credit rating later on in the presentation. When it comes to the Bitcoin milestones, I mean, nothing too surprising. Strategy continues to be the premier Bitcoin treasury company, delivering these incredible results right here. We're now up to 640,808 Bitcoin, which is about twice that of the United States federal government. They're about 12x the holdings of Marathon in second place, and over 20.7x what Metaplanet's current holdings are. I think the race to second place is going to be very interesting with Metaplanet issuing their preferreds, but I think it is very clear that nobody's ever going to catch Strategy because everybody will just be building the staircase beneath Saylor in perpetuity. The market value of Strategy's Bitcoin right now is just over $70 billion, which is incredible considering what was it, 15 billion last year. It has been a historic year for the company, significant appreciation. The BTC yield year to date, which is essentially measuring your Bitcoin exposure embedded in your MSTR shares that you hold and the increase in that percentage, sitting at a 26% year to date, and the company's sitting on $12.9 billion of the BTC dollar gain, which is just the unrealized gain on your Bitcoin holdings. Almost $13 billion for sitting around doing nothing. That's pretty much the best business model I've ever seen. Why are more people not buying Bitcoin? I'm thinking of every Fortune 50 company that's seeing this and wondering why they have so much cash. Warren Buffett, $330 billion in cash. What are you doing, man? And when it comes to the guidance that was released in Q2, a lot of the guidance has just been reaffirmed. Right now, Strategy is projecting $34 billion in projected operating income, and the management team came out and said that this is based on a $150,000 coin price by year end. And that would also bring about $24 billion in net income, which would be about double where we're at so far in this year. And that brings us to projecting a $24 billion in net income, which is the bottom line performance. And when you look at the full year earnings per share based under that scenario, that would get you $80 of earnings per share, which is obviously truly exceptional. How cool would it be if Bitcoin somehow, I know, went to 200,000? I'm just saying, look what gold has done over the past few months. It's possible. Imagine Bitcoin goes to 200,000 and Strategy marks $57 billion of gains in one quarter. That's when the world would really be waking up. I know a lot of y'all are getting impatient with the Bitcoin price. I'm just saying I've seen a lot of value go into a single asset. I don't think it's impossible to see that in Bitcoin. They reaffirmed their 30% year-to-date BTC yield target, so they have about 4% to go. And Fong Li actually made a comment that they just need to raise $2 billion in the next couple months. And they kind of alluded to the fact that they're cooking up something special. They didn't really give a lot of details, but he alluded to the fact that you've seen them raise that much capital in a short amount of time, multiple times. I want this to go on the record right now. This is the Bitcoin Wizard prediction, but I have previously stated about a month ago, I believe that Strategy is going to be coming out with a medium duration credit instrument, and I think that they'll be able to raise that $2 billion by end of year. So right now on the yield curve, you kind of have Stretch with ultra short duration, and then the other three, which are more further out on the duration curve. And I think that the medium duration is a clear opportunity that they just haven't tapped yet. Maybe I'm crazy, but that's what I'm predicting. I think you're going to see that in the next couple months. That's going to get them another 18,000 Bitcoin, give or take, which is wild because I actually put out a prediction that Strategy would end up about 670,000 Bitcoin by end of year. 660, 670, I can't remember my exact prediction, but that would be wild if I was spot on. I think I have a chance of being almost exactly correct. I'll see if I can dig up that tweet. Anyway, they are projecting that $20 billion of BTC dollar gain. Think of that, $20 billion of value created by just sitting on your Bitcoin. That's the best ROI on your investment I think anybody could really ever ask for. Think of all these operating businesses pushing elite human capital to trying to be getting $20 billion in profit. You guys can just be buying Bitcoin. It's pretty obvious to me at this point, I know. Next slide. They spent a solid portion of the earnings call talking about how successful the ATM equity capital raising has been, as well as the other preferred stock ATMs and the Stretch IPO success. The Stretch was a huge part of the earnings call. We'll be getting into more of that. But the bottom line, if you're raising over $20 billion by selling equity, the amount of demand to get into MSTR has been absolutely crazy. The scale is continuing to be just enormous. I think a lot of people are fixated on share price and they're not seeing the big picture with their Bitcoin per share increasing. And the fact that this is a slightly leveraged and Bitcoin amplified play, I think that people are just losing sight of how crazy it is that this company has been raising capital. Think of it this way, the company has been buying on average 337 Bitcoin every day for the past 5 years and 2 months. That's correct. 337 Bitcoin every day for over 5 straight years. It's wild. This is the ultimate juggernaut that is going to lead us to the orange singularity. Because of the passive bid on Bitcoin that Strategy has been giving us, I think that Michael Saylor has created an incredible amount of wealth for Bitcoiners. Actually, I don't think that that's just reality. On to the next slide. We got to talk about Stretch and the dividend momentum. A huge selling point that they went over is that they are raising the dividend rate again for the month of November. It's based on the volume weighted average price of Stretch. And if it's under a certain threshold, which we know that Strategy wants to keep it trading between $99 and $101, they will raise the dividend until people buy it. And they are sticking true to their word, 10.5% dividends that are paid monthly. If you like money, you buy Stretch. I like the simplified messaging coming from the company. They are mentioning that they're going to be doing a lot of marketing as well on X, YouTube, so on and so forth. So it'll be cool to see some ad spend. I really like the idea that we need to be pushing the message more. I think a lot of people in the Bitcoin, the MSTR bubble, we are in our own echo chamber a little bit. So I really cannot wait to see more messaging coming from the company. And one of my favorite things from the earnings call was the focus from management on the long-term thesis of why you're buying the company. They could not have been more clear about the current trajectory and what they are going after. They perfectly articulated the business plan. The reason why you buy MSTR is totally different than when you would buy it a year ago. The game has changed. The company has changed. And I really think that this is going to usher in more shareholder alignment. The company is coming out saying that we intend to make the convertible bonds equitize. Saylor explicitly said that they are looking looking to deleverage the balance sheet and make it about the amplified Bitcoin because of the success of the preferreds. That is the new strategy. I had a follower on X ask me, Adam, how come nobody asked about the negative sentiment? And my reply simply was, the negative sentiment needs to always be addressed by what the business plan is. If the management team can effectively communicate the business plan and there are shareholders who are not on board with the business plan, you need to sell your shares. That is what you would do with any company. It's not the job of the management team to handhold right now. The opportunity is digital credit. They are coming out saying, we want to eat the world. We want to tap $300 trillion of trapped capital. And if you don't like that, if that doesn't fit your investing thesis, then fine, sell your shares, get out. If you pay attention, they did a lot of phrasing around long time horizon, and that's exactly what we need to be talking about. They literally said, we are looking at managing this company on a 10-year successful time horizon. This is a capital markets transformation, and that's not going to happen in a period of weeks and months. It's going to be happening on a longer time horizon. And if you want my humble opinion, if you want leveraged Bitcoin, go get leveraged Bitcoin. You can do that. There's ways to get that. But right now, this is about something much bigger than a leveraged Bitcoin bet on a few month-long time horizon. Anyway, another huge selling point that they talked about a lot was the tax-efficient dividends that are being paid out on the preferreds. They are being classified as ROC, which stands for return of capital, which means that the dividends that you receive when you're getting paid them monthly via Stretch or quarterly via the others, they're classified as return of capital because they are paid with equity issuance rather than operating profit. So that means that you defer your taxes. You're not paying them immediately, which is obviously a huge selling point for something that would pay you 10.5%. So I think that this is going to just draw more people in. This is the messaging that we want to see. When it comes to their software business, they are actually up 10.9% year over year with over $128 million of revenue. Totally cool to see. The subscription revenue is up 65.4% and a huge gross profit margin of 70.5%. I think a lot of people forget that Strategy is still a software company, but hey, they are getting some revenue. However, it is a slim part of what they're doing. It is a part of what they're doing. Now I'm going to be getting into some of my favorite slides from the presentation, talking about what I think the best messaging has been to the shareholders. I love this visual of how robust the capital structure is. Right now, they are carrying over 100 years worth of dividend payments in the value of their net assets. That's correct. Their current dividend obligation is 0.97% of their Bitcoin net asset value. The convertible debt right now is about 11.6% of their Bitcoin net asset value. Their current convertible debt is sitting at about 11.6% of their Bitcoin net asset value. But remember, over the next few years, they are planning on retiring this. They want to let it convert into shares and it goes bye-bye, cleaning up the balance sheet. And then you have the preferred equity sitting at 9.3% of the Bitcoin net asset value as well. But this is really showing the enterprise value at $98 billion versus the annual dividend and interest payments. I mean, look how powerful this company is from a capital positioning standpoint. And I do like this slide too because it's framing it as a percentage of the total capital raised, 1.7%. Strategy has clearly shown that there is that insatiable demand for their equity, and they are taking advantage of that. 6.1% of their year-to-date operating income and 2.6% of the equity raised with the MSTR common equity. $26.9 billion raised from MSTR ATM. That's a lot of money. Another giant announcement is that they are expanding the geographic access to Bitcoin-backed credit. That's correct. Strategy is going global, and they made this clear that they are actually making it native in the currency of the international jurisdictions. So they've announced the intention to tap the $4.1 trillion in Europe and the $1.6 trillion in Canada. And when asked more specifically about this, Fong Li kind of alluded to the fact that they have been cooking up something in the background. And I think that they're a lot further along with bringing this to the market than anybody realizes, which was kind of bullish to hear. Another thing that's interesting is that they seem to be leaving Japan alone right now. So Metaplanet seems to me like they have a clear lane with their preferreds, but we'll see what happens. And I love this graph that they have here. This is showing how much more capital is accessible after their credit rating of the B- from S&P Global. This is where we were before, $2.8 trillion of capital that you could access by issuing credit, which is all fine and dandy. They've obviously raised over $6 billion, which is great, but now we are getting additional incremental access with that B- rating. Before, they couldn't even access this, but with that rating, that is bringing us almost 3 times the level of access. And when we look at the longer term adoption, when they are given an investment grade, which, let's be honest, they already should have, obviously, they have the current credit rating that Chuck E. Cheese does, but that is the long game. Look at that from today. That's over 11x the amount of capital that they can tap from where we were just before a few days ago. This is the big picture. If you're whining about the stock price, I don't know what to tell you. Nobody can compete with the products that Strategy is bringing to the marketplace. Nobody. This is the long-term thesis right now. Get on board or get off the train, kids. Real quick, going back to the return of capital dividend guidance, they are saying that they expect the ROC treatment for 10 years or more, which is wild. And think of how Saylor is going to frame this, selling this versus everything else that you could use as fixed income. He is framing the dividend rate that you're getting from all the traditional credit instruments versus what you would get from more traditional fixed income instruments as a tax adjusted yield. Okay, so if you're getting a 10.5% from Stretch, that is allowing you to pay a 0% tax rate while it's deferred versus something that's yielding you 4% that you're also paying qualified taxes on, then perhaps the actual tax adjusted dividend you're getting from holding a Strategy preferred is 16 to 20%. And they're saying that they're expecting this level of treatment for years to come, 10 years or more. Now, that would obviously be if Strategy is paying the dividends with equity issuance and not from operating income. So that's assuming that the demand for the common equity will persist in perpetuity, but because it is going to be amplified Bitcoin, I don't think that the demand for that is going to be going away. And this is what I'm talking about here with the amplified Bitcoin. I know I've shown this many times in the channel, but this is showing you your increase in your Bitcoin exposure over a number of years and not weeks or months. Get it? The people with the high time preference, low time horizons, guys. This is what's going to show up when you have a 30% amplification. A 2.x BTC factor means that the starting Bitcoin per share versus the ending Bitcoin per share is going to be 2.8x higher. The green bar is your baseline Bitcoin exposure with MSTR, and when you're having amplified Bitcoin from digital credit, that is the green bar here. This is your increase in amplification to Bitcoin over time. And it's super exciting because what if you get 40% amplification or 50% amplification? The team alluded to that possibility. So you're just going to see those green bars get perpetually higher as Strategy continually comes to the market with better products than exist anywhere else. It was really cool to see Saylor acknowledge the downtrend in MNAV of this year, and I think that he gave some pretty rational reasons why. I don't think he really mentioned the deleveraging of the balance sheet since last November that I've spent a lot of time talking about because we all know that the new thesis is not leverage, but it's amplification. But he talked a lot about the success of the Bitcoin ETFs like IBIT as well as all the other Bitcoin derivatives that are coming out this year. You think that for a long time, MSTR was the only vehicle for Bitcoin exposure that a lot of investors had access to, and that's actually starting to not become the case this year. There's lots of other instruments for Bitcoin exposure. So in my humble opinion, that coupled with the deleveraging of the balance sheet, the market probably hasn't rewarded it with a multiple because they can go get leverage elsewhere. And I also want to touch on the timeline to the convertible equitization and why is this important? Because the S&P literally said the amount of debt on their balance sheet is playing into their credit rating. They mentioned the convertible debt. They mentioned that if it goes down over time, they will reward it with a higher result most likely. And the cool thing is that we actually don't have a lot of time to wait before we see it go down pretty much dramatically. This is assuming Strategy equitizes each tranche at the earliest allowable call date. So in 2026, we could see a $3 billion reduction in convertible debt, and a year after that, a 1.4. And I would imagine that they are aiming to do this as soon as possible. So very quickly, my ultimate takeaway, I think the bears are totally in shambles. The amount of hate that I was getting yesterday on X and on YouTube that I'm getting paid somehow from this company, totally false, absolutely ridiculous. I am literally doing this for the love of the game. Bitcoin is the future, and I want to be on the front lines fighting for adoption. That's why I'm excited. I don't have ulterior motives. The reality is that I get rich when Bitcoin goes up. Shocker to everybody. Strategy literally asked us to ask a hard question, and I asked about share buybacks. I literally said, hey, will you guys buy back shares if Strategy goes below a 1x MNAV? Because Metaplanet is telegraphing that they'll be happy to do it. And then Fong said that since 2018, they've had the authorization for share buybacks on the table, so they would do it if it makes sense. Another attack vector from the bears totally taken away. Fong also said that if they had to, they would sell their high cost basis Bitcoin if they ever have to. Another attack vector from the bears taken away. The amount of people saying that you're not going to get a credit rating because your Bitcoin isn't collateral, because it's not pledged as collateral. Well, guess what? You were all wrong. The S&P is treating Bitcoin as collateral. They called out all of the high time preference shareholders. Get off the train if you're not aligned with the vision. And then Saylor alluded to the fact that all of the big banks might be buying Bitcoin in 2026. How bullish is that? In my opinion, the stars are aligning. An amazing quarter from Strategy. I really love everything that they had to say. I'm not gonna lie, when they started off by just reaffirming the guidance, I wasn't too excited, but they mentioned that they want to market Stretch more. They mentioned that they're raising the interest rate on Stretch. They mentioned that they're going global with the preferred equity. And then we topped it off with one of the greatest Saylor speeches ever given. He wants to eat the world, and he wants MSTR to stand for Mstr, which, in my opinion, this is the path forward to do so. My name is Adam Livingston. I am the Bitcoin Wizard. Thank you so much for watching this content. If you liked it, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I bring the daily Bitcoin insights to the masses. Have a terrific day. Do not party too hard. Class dismissed.